blind black girl is sitting quietly on a bench outside a grocery store, holding her cane across her lap, waiting for her ride. She doesn't see the white woman watching her from the SUV, doesn't hear her whisper into her phone. But she feels the shift in the air when the police cruiser pulls up. Two white officers step out. One grabs her cane, the other grabs her arm. She's confused, trying to speak, but they call her defiant. They say she's pretending to be blind, accuse her of hiding drugs in her braids. She's taken to the station alone. Her mother doesn't even know. In a dim back room, the lead officer chuckles as he holds electric clippers. Without warning, he shaves her head, slow, patchy strokes. Her thick, neatly braided hair falls to the ground in silence. She flinches, but she doesn't scream. The other officers laugh. One takes a photo. No one knows her name. No one asks. But what they don't know is, just this morning her mother was sworn in as the new police chief, and right now she's walking toward the station, badge on her chest, and fury in her silence. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. The town of Kentbury was the kind of place people described as quiet, with a proud tilt of the head. Rows of maple trees lined the sidewalks, and the main street smelled faintly of roasted coffee and old books. But beneath its peaceful surface there was something colder, a silent line drawn between what was welcome and what was merely tolerated. 15-year-old Amina had been in Kentbury for 3 weeks. She didn't talk much at her new school. She didn't need to. Her presence carried its own quiet. Her shoulders straight, her steps steady. Her cane tapped out the rhythm of confidence, soft, sure, and calm. Amina had been blind since birth. Her world wasn't dark. It was textured. She heard more, felt more, and remembered everything she touched. Her braids, done every Sunday by her mother's careful fingers, were a map of trust. Each one told her she was seen, even if she couldn't. So her mother, Mariah, had raised her alone. A woman carved from steel and service, Mariah had spent 20 years rising through the police force. This move to Kentbury was her reward, and her test. She was named the first black police chief. In the town's 118-year history, her swearing-in was scheduled for noon, but Mariah had kept it quiet. She wanted to walk in unannounced, let them feel her authority before they saw her face. So that morning, as she pressed her uniform, Amina asked if she could walk to the store by herself. Just a short trip. A little freedom in this new town. Mariah hesitated, then nodded. Straight there. Straight back. Amina smiled. Of course. The sun was soft and the sidewalk warm beneath her soles. Amina's cane traced the way with ease. She passed 2 women talking outside a florist shop. One of them stopped mid-sentence. Is she faking that? Amina didn't hear the comment, but the woman followed anyway. Watched her pause near the store. Watched her fingers search her bag for her list. Watched her stand still too long. The woman made the call. Described a young girl pretending to be blind to distract and steal. Officers were dispatched immediately. The call log later showed words like suspicious, non-compliant, and possible threat. But there had been no theft. No disturbance. Just a quiet girl waiting. When the cruiser pulled up, Amina didn't move. She heard the gravel shift under boots. She introduced herself, but they didn't listen. She asked for her mother. They took her cane. She asked why. They called her mouthy. Inside the cruiser, she sat still, not crying, not speaking. The station wasn't far, but far enough that Mariah didn't know. Far enough for a decision to be made behind closed doors. By the time Amina entered the precinct, the officer in charge had already decided she was lying. Nobody. That blind walks like that, he muttered. She's hiding something. In the back room, they told her it was standard procedure. They didn't read her rights. They didn't call her mother. They didn't know who her mother was. The badge that could have stopped everything sat clean and shining on a folded uniform across town. The clock struck 11:42 a.m., 18 minutes before introductions. 18 minutes before the truth arrived. Inside, The Kentbury Police Department. The noise was ordinary. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and a stale scent of old coffee drifted through the air. But down the hallway, in a back holding room behind two locked doors, something ugly was happening that didn't belong to any report or official log. Amina sat on a cold plastic chair, her fingers nervously folded in her lap. Her cane was gone. Her braids still neat, still tight, but she could feel the way they were being looked at. The lead officer was a tall man named Curtis Dilly, 17 years on the force. He wore his authority like armor, but his jokes always slid just beneath policy. He squinted at Amina as if she were a puzzle he didn't like the look of. Gang ties come in all sizes. He mumbled to the junior officer beside him, who shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. She's got that look, acting blind, hiding behind that hair. He opened a drawer and pulled out electric clippers. You'll thank me later, he muttered. Then louder. We don't allow outside items that could be hiding something. Braids are perfect for smuggling. Mina said nothing. The first buzz of the clippers echoed off the walls like a saw through silence. Her body stiffened, but she didn't flinch. One braid, then another. Curtis laughed low in his throat. Like she's in shock, he said. Bet. She can see just fine now. A pile of her hair began to gather on the floor, thick, dark, and sacred. The small room smelled of cut roots and stripped dignity. Another officer peeked in and quickly turned away. Still, Amina didn't scream. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Her breathing slowed, then stilled. She seemed to shrink into herself, as though folding inward was the only safe place left. Outside, the room. The other officers tried to stay focused on their screens, but one younger cop, Maria Jenkins, kept glancing at the hallway camera feed. She had only joined the force 6 months ago and hadn't seen much like this. Her stomach turned, but she stayed seated. For now. The shaving continued. When Curtis finished, he wiped the clippers on a rag and nodded with mock approval. There, now we see her. The receptionist in the front made a joke about a makeover for Miss Fraud, and someone laughed. Not everyone. In the locker room, a few officers whispered. One of them had gone to the academy with Mariah. He remembered her steady hands during firearms training, the way she always checked twice before she spoke. He didn't know her daughter was here. Back in the holding room, Amina sat still, her scalp bare and raw, tiny cuts along her hairline. She wore no expression. Her silence wasn't strength anymore, it was armor. Her eyes, though unseeing, stared straight ahead. There was no one left to talk to. Curtis left the room and dropped the clippers back into the drawer. Someone can sweep that up later, he said. She'll be processed after the new chief gets here. If she shows. It was 11:56 a.m. 4 minutes until introductions. Across town, Mariah stood outside the station doors. She was early. She adjusted her badge and glanced up at the building. It looked smaller than she remembered from the interview. She took a deep breath, her thoughts already on reforms, recruitment gaps, and overdue internal reviews. She had no idea that her daughter was just 30 feet away, behind 2 locked doors. Inside the station, a shift was beginning to happen. Maria Jenkins stood and walked toward the break room, but paused near the holding hallway. She stared at the closed door, then at the floor. She thought about saying something, then turned back. In the reception area, a clipboard was passed around, names of staff attending the introduction ceremony. Curtis Dilly signed his name quickly and laughed with another officer about donuts. No one mentioned the girl with no name, the girl with no cane, the girl with no braids, no one. Not yet, but the silence was growing teeth, and the badge outside the door was about to walk in. In the small holding room, Amina sat motionless. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her shaved head bowed, though not in shame. The air was cold. Her scalp stung from careless clippers. Stray hairs clung to her sweatshirt like ash. The clock ticked overhead, but time no longer felt real. Her hands twitched now and then, a small movement barely visible, the way someone shakes in a storm but never says a word. Her eyes, though blind, stayed forward. Still. Quiet. No one had offered her water. No one had told her why she was there. In the hallway, Curtis Dilly leaned against the wall, chuckling with a colleague. The door to Amina's room was cracked just enough for voices to slip in. "She's probably part of some scam ring," the receptionist said nearby. "Play the blind card, make people feel sorry. That hair, definitely hiding something." Curtis laughed. "Not anymore." Amina heard it. Every word. Still, she didn't speak. Down the hallway, Maria Jenkins stood by the printer, watching the others joke. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to feed a paper into the machine. Her eyes kept flicking toward the room, toward the door, toward the shame she wasn't ready to name. Behind the front desk, someone pulled up the daily schedule. The bold black letters read, "Chief Mariah Lansing swearing in, 12 gal p.m. Front conference room." The room fell into a brief hush. Curtis raised an eyebrow. "She's coming here? Today?" One officer nodded. "They're introducing her in 5 minutes." Curtis blinked, then shrugged. "Guess we'll find out if she plays nice with the rest of us." Maria Jenkins stepped forward and said softly, "What's her last name again?" Another officer answered without looking up. "Lansing." Maria turned and walked to the hallway again, a slow unease climbing up her spine. She looked at the intake sheet. The one no one had filed properly, the one with only a scribbled first name. Her breath caught. Amina Lansing. In the holding room, Amina heard footsteps, rapid now. A door creaked open. She felt a gust of air. Someone looking at her, someone breathing, faster than before. Maria stepped inside the room, her face pale, her mouth parted in disbelief. Curtis appeared behind her. "What are you doing?" Maria turned around. "Where's the phone? Why hasn't she been booked?" "She doesn't get a call, not until after processing." He glanced at the sheet in her hand. "Something wrong?" Maria looked at him long and quiet. Then down at the girl, then back again. She didn't answer. At the front desk, the door buzzed. The new police chief had arrived. Boots echoed across the tile, not rushed, not angry, just steady. As the front officers looked up, each one slowly stood. One adjusted their collar. Another stepped back, uncertain. Mariah Lansing entered, her presence quiet but undeniable. Her eyes scanned the room, unreadable. The receptionist's smile vanished. Curtis straightened, blinking fast. Mariah looked at the intake board, then at the officers. Her voice was calm. "I need the name of every person being held right now." No one answered at first. Then someone mumbled, "Just one." She nodded. "Name?" The receptionist hesitated. "Amina." Mariah's face didn't change. She just asked one word. "Where?" Mariah didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her badge gleamed against her dark blue uniform, the gold trim catching the sterile light of the precinct lobby. Behind her, a hush blanketed the room like fog. Curtis Dilly froze beside the hallway, the back of his neck tinged red. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Mariah's eyes didn't blink. "Where is my daughter?" The words landed like iron. No one moved, no one breathed. Maria Jenkins took a small step forward. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Back holding room, third door." Mariah nodded once. She moved with purpose. Each footfall steady, quiet, final. She passed Curtis without a glance. He tried to speak again. "Chief, I didn't know." But the sentence died in his throat when she looked at him. Not with rage, but with a silence that scraped. She opened the holding room door. The girl on the plastic chair turned her head slightly. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Mariah stepped inside, crossed the floor in 3 slow steps, and knelt. Amina's head was lowered, her scalp raw and pink, her cheeks streaked with dry tears. Mariah reached for her hand. She held it gently. Her other hand moved across the floor, collecting a single long braid. She didn't cry. She inhaled once, shaky. Then stood. Behind her, the hallway had filled with people who had nowhere to go. Mariah stepped out, her posture straight. Her daughter's name was a prayer she carried in her chest. She didn't shout, she didn't point. She didn't touch her gun. She simply said, "This department will be silent now." Curtis tried again, his voice cracking. She wasn't processed. We had reason to believe she was. Mariah cut him off, not with words, but with the way she turned her back to him. She walked to the front desk, a full list of every officer on shift. Surveillance footage, body cam logs. The receptionist scrambled, the keys clattered against the desk. Mariah reached into her coat and pulled out her official appointment letter. She laid it on the table like a verdict. This is the last day. This station operates like the ones you remember. Behind her, Amina stood in the hallway, a single hand against the wall to guide her. Maria Jenkins moved toward her, slowly, respectfully, and gently offered her cane. Amina accepted it without a word. Curtis Dilly backed away, his hands twitching. The silence in the room was now heavy. Shame moved in the air like heat. No shouting, no press cameras, no arrests, just truth. And the woman who brought it in on foot. Have you ever been judged for how you look or where you're from? Share your story in the comments below. Mariah Lansing didn't sleep that night, not because of rage, though it lingered in the corners of her mind like smoke, but because there was work to do. Paperwork, statements, phone calls, silence to break and systems to challenge. By morning, she had filed 3 formal internal complaints, 2 against Curtis Dilly, 1 against the receptionist. She didn't call the media. She didn't grant interviews. She let the footage speak. The body cam files, once ignored, were now unavoidable. The grainy video showed her daughter sitting quietly, asking questions with measured calm, offering her name and mother's number. It showed Curtis mocking her, handling her without gloves, touching her braids with ungloved hands. It showed the clippers, the laughter, the deliberate silence. Within 24 hours, the Kentbury mayor's office received over 5,000 emails. Community leaders began speaking out. The NACP released a statement. Local pastors marched to City Hall, not shouting, just walking. Together in coats and purpose. At the department, the energy changed. Curtis Dilly arrived at the station the next morning, expecting support. Instead, he found his locker emptied and a sealed envelope with his name on it. Suspended, pending full investigation. Immediate leave of absence. He stared at the letter, then at the officers around him. None met his eyes. Mariah had not fired him. Not yet. She didn't have to. The silence was doing the work. Inside her new office, Mariah kept a photo of Amina at age 10, smiling wide, holding a trophy for a Braille essay contest. Next to it, she placed the braid she'd picked up from the floor. She made no mention of it in her speeches. Instead, she introduced a new policy, the Dignity Protocol, a comprehensive rulebook on handling youth detainees, especially those with disabilities, required quarterly training, clear definitions of excessive force, cameras required in all holding rooms, no exceptions. Some officers grumbled, quietly, the older ones, but others were watching, listening. Maria Jenkins stepped forward first. She offered a written statement. Then another officer followed, a man who had laughed that day. He didn't defend himself. He just said, "I should have said something. I didn't." Mariah didn't offer forgiveness. She offered responsibility. Curtis's past complaints resurfaced, 8 in total. All previously closed without consequence, now reopened. One story in particular began circulating. A Latina teenager, arrested, at the same station 6 months ago, described a nearly identical experience. Mockery, unnecessary force, threats. She had left town. Now she returned with a lawyer. Amina stayed home from school for a week. She didn't ask to go back yet. She stayed mostly in her room, resting, healing. Not from fear, but from being so deeply misunderstood. Mariah checked on her every evening, no long talks. Just soft meals, warm blankets, and the slow rebuilding of safety. Outside their house, the local paper ran a headline. Police chief's daughter shaved in custody. Town demands answers. But Mariah never responded to reporters. Her statement was made in policy. In consequences, in silence that roared louder than any press conference. At the next department meeting, she stood before her officers. She read aloud the section of the new protocol regarding disability rights. Then she said, "Do not confuse kindness with weakness. This badge means nothing if it's not earned daily, and if you wear it while harming the vulnerable, you won't wear it long." No one applauded. They didn't need to. The message had landed, and for the first time in a long time, the halls of the Kentbury Police Department felt still, not from fear, but from a shift in the wind. The reckoning had begun. 7 days later, the conference room at Kentbury Town Hall filled with more people than it had seats. Some stood quietly in the back. Others sat with arms folded, brows furrowed, waiting to see what would come of it all. Mariah Lansing stood at the front, her uniform pressed, her badge shining. She didn't speak first. She waited. Let the air settle. Then she began. "I'm not here today to defend anything. I'm here to change everything." Behind her, a screen lit up with the words Dignity Protocol, Phase 1. She didn't talk about her daughter. She didn't describe the clippers or the laughter or the braid in her drawer. She talked about policy, about behavior, about how power, when left unchecked, rots from the inside out. She introduced new training modules, body cam review teams with civilian oversight, trauma-informed handling for minors, annual evaluations that weighed compassion as heavily as conduct. Every officer would now be required to shadow a disability advocate for 12 hours per year. No exceptions. Curtis Dilley's dismissal was confirmed the next day. His pension was denied after internal findings showed pattern misconduct. No press conference was held, just a posted notice. Violation of public trust terminated. At Amina's school, things changed too. Her classmates had seen the headline. Many hadn't known she was the chief's daughter. Even more hadn't known she was blind. But now they watched her differently. Not with pity, with caution, with quiet respect. Her first day back, she wore a soft blue knit cap over her shaved head. Her cane tapped steadily beside her as she entered the building. Some stared. She kept walking. In the lunchroom, a girl named Lily, freckled and usually shy, stood from her table and crossed the room. She didn't say much, just sat beside Amina and ate her sandwich in silence. A boy offered to walk her to 6th period. No one called her names. Not anymore. The staff held a disability awareness assembly a week later. Amina didn't attend. She didn't need to. Mariah stopped picking her up at the back of the school. Amina asked to walk again, just down the block. Freedom returned in pieces, and, across Kentbury, other things changed too. Complaints once buried were reopened. 2 former officers stepped forward about misconduct they'd been told to ignore. One cried as she recounted a case she'd kept quiet. Mariah listened to each one, took notes, and offered only one thing in return: accountability. At a town event that spring, Mariah received a Civic Leadership Award. She accepted it with Amina standing beside her, hand in hers. No big speech, just a few quiet words. "My daughter taught me that silence can be stronger than noise, but silence without change is just another kind of harm." The audience stood, not in ovation, in agreement. There were no banners, no TV crews, just townspeople finally seeing clearly. The Kentbury Police Department didn't become perfect overnight, but every hallway had eyes now. Every badge had weight, and the name Lansing was spoken not with fear, but with a kind of reverence. Not because Mariah demanded it, but because she'd earned it. Amina, meanwhile, joined the school's Braille Poetry Club. She didn't speak often, but when she did, the room went still. Her first poem was titled, "Things You Hear When They Think You're Not Listening," and when she read it, her voice didn't shake. It cut. By summer, the town of Kentbury looked the same on the outside, but something beneath its surface had shifted, quietly, permanently. At the precinct, new recruits entered with different eyes. They walked past the holding rooms with a hush in their steps. On their first day, they were shown the Dignity Protocol. On their second, they were asked to sit in silence for 5 minutes with their radios off, to feel the weight of time as someone detained might. Mariah never mentioned her daughter by name in department meetings. She never referenced the incident. Again, she didn't need to. Her leadership wasn't carved from speeches, it was pressed into policy, into expectation, into presence. Amina grew her hair back slowly. Some days she wore it free, coiled and soft. Other days she covered it with a scarf in the color of ocean stone. Her world remained quiet, but not small. She wrote, she walked, she rebuilt, and in the local library's community room, taped to the bulletin board above the Braille printer, hung her poem's final line. You tried to shame me in the dark, but I never needed light to be seen. The town never forgot, and neither should we. If stories like this matter to you, share this one. Let silence break. Let dignity rise. Subscribe for more true feeling stories that shine light in dark places.